Big Nolan Wells update, the timeline just shifted and hidden witnesses are finally coming into the picture from every interview.
There's been a lot of people that have been contacted and interviewed, and there's a lot of people who were there that day that voluntarily came forward to tell what they know.
This report goes a long way in identifying, who may be a witness to those critical hours and minutes that there are gaps of information.
A Nolan Wells bombshell report tonight. Does it reveal new witnesses? And because of the new timeline report, is there a timeline shift in what happened the afternoon and evening? Nolan Wells seemingly disappears. His body found washed up at Horn Island. Not only has the timeline been analyzed by the Cajun Navy, the U.S. Cajun Navy, based on all sorts of statistical data, new photos are emerging. Take a look at this photo before we go to the Cajun Navy. Look at this. Check out what you're seeing. Look at all the boats surrounding where Nolan was. Leave up the photo out to Caitlin Becker, senior national correspondent, New York Post, star of New York Postcast, their new podcast. Caitlin, what are we seeing?
Well, what we're seeing here comes from this new report from the United Cajun Navy, and you're seeing several boats strung together. This is one of the first images that we've seen of this certain configuration of boats there. They're all identified, one of which was the boat that Nolan came out there on. There's several others kind of anchored with it and tied up, which begs the question of where was Nolan when this photo was taken, because it's unclear if he's actually in it. What time was this photo actually taken? So what you're seeing here is, as you said, a potential pool of witnesses.
Hey, Caitlin, look at this. There's boat number 1. There's boat X. There's boat number 2. There's boat number 3. And there's a boat from which the photo is taken. Now, look in the water. There much has been made. Nolan Wells was drinking. Okay, well, apparently everybody was. They all have containers, open containers in the water. Okay, as far as I know, that's not a felony. Boat number 1, full of people. Boat X, full of people. Boat number 2, full of people. Boat number 3, full of people. People on the boat from which the photo was taken. Some of these boats tied together. You know what that means in my world, Caitlin Becker, joining us in the New York Post? Let me see, Caitlin, please. That means witnesses. See, when I look at that, I see witnesses. Other people say, hey, there's people having a good time. I see witnesses. Do you see all those people?
And a lot of them.
Who were they? Have they been spoken to? Have they been polygraphed? What can they tell me?
That is the question, right? We don't know from an investigative standpoint who has been spoken to, exactly who is in this photo, and what they have or haven't told law enforcement, because there hasn't been really any transparency there. But from what our reporting has showed, there have been dozens of people who have spoken to law enforcement as witnesses. But Nancy, we don't know if it's any of these people that you're seeing in this little cove area right here. And the timing, I think, is really important, because these images are taken right around, I think the timeline's about 3:30-ish, 4:30-ish, when the boat that Nolan came out there on leaves and starts taking on water. That's one of the pegs for the timeline. When these photos were actually taken, that is a peg for a timeline. But what we don't know is where Nolan is. There he is. You can see that image right there. But we don't know is where Nolan was when that first image that we saw with all of those boats kind of tied together, when that was taken.
My husband and I, we have had countless conversations with all of our children about the importance of understanding when you are moving in different spaces with people that do not look like you. And it's unfortunate that we have to have these conversations.
There's nothing there. Nolan is not on the boat. There's nobody that looked like Nolan on the boat. Let's get to this Cajun Navy geospatial timeline and vessel movement analysis document. Now, this was something that was breaking news. Look at what happened. Look at all of this. Blah, 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 blah. I saw another weirdo online Just pumping this up, pumping it up. That dude used his whole live stream to talk about this, and it's a nothing burger. I went and reviewed it before I ever put it out to you guys, so I'm not going to mislead you and lead you astray and lie to you so I can get viewers and I can get people on here so I can sell you something. I'm not going to do that. We reviewed this thing, and it's a nothing burger. I don't even know why the Cajun Navy put this out. There's nothing there. Maybe it gives people fodder. They can create a lie because they know you're not going to read 26 pages. But I'm going to have Grant read the synopsis because we wrote you a quick synopsis on what you will see and won't see, and I'm going to go through the document so you know we didn't just make this up. All right? Grant, roll it.
Yes, sir. The United Cajun Navy report does not determine how Nolan Wells died or assign responsibility to anyone. Its most important finding is that a major gap remains in the timeline between Nolan's last independent corroborated sighting and the reported 4:31 p.m. departure of the boat he arrived on. The report also says the 4:31 departure time has not been verified through GPS, engine, or other electronic records, and that video showing approximately 3:23 and 4:27 may be important but cannot be treated as confirmed event times without the original files and metadata. The report also documents changes in position of several boats, including Boat X and Frontier Bay, but it cannot establish exactly when they moved, where they went, who was aboard, and whether those movements were connected to Nolan's disappearance. Finally, it also does not establish when or why the Triton began taking on water. The main recommendation is to obtain original videos, phone and location data, vessel GPS, and engine records, and complete passenger roster so investigators can build a verified minute-by-minute timeline.
Now, thank you, Grant. What he said was, it's a nothing burger. Pull it up. Get it back on the screen. It's a nothing burger. I'm going to walk you through this thing so you know that I didn't just make it up. We're going to do it real quick. So pretty much what they said is that they don't have any information enough to determine anything new in this case. They have a couple pictures that I've already looked at that doesn't show Nolan and not one picture on here. Just so you guys know, Warren Hudson and the boys that have been accused have all given a timeline to me where I can adequately and confidently say they were all gone when that last boat was towed out at around 4:30. Everybody that was on that boat, except for, I would say, 3 people, Nolan being one of them, did not return. Everybody else returned on the boat. The boat logs are there, and all of the above. And the other people who didn't return are accounted for, except for Nolan, unfortunately. And so there's nothing new under the sun here that we're going to find out. I wish there was. When it is, I'm going to let you guys know. But just so that we can do a quick briefing through this document, they show a picture here. They have some exhibits on here, Boat 1, Boat 2, Boat 3, Boat X, and then they have Warren on Palm Beach. Okay, and obviously, just so you guys know, there were 3 boats that went out in Nolan's group. The kids that he went out with went on 3 boats. They all returned. Unfortunately, Nolan was not with them because according to every documented conversation that I've had and every documented statement that has been made public, they all said that he wanted to stay on the island with that girl, and they all left. Okay, so you go down to the document, it says investigative focus, and it tells you what they're going to investigate right here. It says at what time, which boats were present, which boats moved, when did they move, who was on board of them, and all of this. That's all they're saying. Executive findings, they talk about the GPS locations of some of the boat positions and all of this, which means absolutely nothing. There's nothing new to even talk about here. It talks about the 4:31 departure hinge is what it says, and it just talks about that there was a departure time. It gives a geotrack location of, the boat that Nolan came in on, which was Wyatt's boat. And then it says witness material. It tells you nothing. Late observation. It talks about somebody having a notable observation at 7:30, saying that Nolan was not on the island anywhere that they could find. Nowhere in sight is what it says right here. So they have this gap between 4:30 and 7:30, which is what they're referring to. It looked like they have GPS location and everything and all of the documents that they have pertaining to this, giving a gap. 4:31, which we know that's when the boys, was starting to sink and they end up leaving. All the boats that Nolan came in on were already gone. He could have got on other boats, but obviously he didn't because he's lost his life. 7:30 is a gap where people are saying that they did not see Nolan. Now, however, We still don't know if that was true, that they did not see Nolan anywhere. I mean, it's true that they probably didn't see Nolan anywhere, but that don't mean Nolan wasn't still there. He could have been off somewhere else that they didn't see. So there's still this gap, and this document does not cover the gap. It just continues on. They give this little grid that says evidence classification and limitations. You can go through and read this. TMZ actually launched this. They give you another grid that says source media inventory. It tells you what JPEG files that they have, and it kind of give you a little bit of background on that. So you know exactly what they have, what they don't have. They give a description. Here's some of the documentation that it shows, GPS location of the boat area. I think I can't see which one this is. Let's say it's at 1.6 meters. Vessel B. It's just a complicated mess. So this is with some GPS coordinates, I think, where the boys were hanging out at. And I think this may be where Nolan was found. I don't want to assume. There's a bunch of exaggerated BS. So, I mean, not BS, it's just a bunch of nothing. This is a little bit of flight overview of the island. You go down here, and there's a working timeline. This is their timeline, which says absolutely nothing. I think the Cajun Navy should never waste their time putting this out. And then it goes through. This is important to look at because this just tell you there's nothing there. They got the 4:30 account, and then they got a 5 account, right? It says Matthew Lamp states a passenger was pretty certain a person was part of a group that was also fighting around 5 p.m. He says that I can't read that. Is that Beltran? Oh, Bertram. It's so little I can't read none of this. It says with the blue top left shortly afterwards fast, not believing that to be a factor in the timeline. Let me tell you why, okay? Because they got another person that contradicted it. So it goes down through a bunch of nothing to nothing, and here's a couple pictures that don't say anything, really. I don't know why they put this out. So just pictures there, on board the Trident. I wonder, is that picture there? It's just another picture of the beach, kind of show you what it looks like out there when they were out there. Here's a couple photos here of what it looks like. I think these are actually videos, but they're not going to play on this document. So these are a couple videos that put a little timeline together, but Nolan is nowhere to be found in any of this. Here's a little shot of kind of the area they were in. Nolan is nowhere to be found in this area. They don't depict Nolan anywhere. What a waste of time. Okay, this is what they were talking about, that 5:30 thing. I guess this content creator or person wrote a note pretty much saying that they believe they saw something suspicious. And then this person here on the right pretty much debunked it and said, hey, that was us who you yelled at. You should be more responsible putting out false information. And so what the Cajun Navy is saying is that this was a post saying that they may have seen Nolan at 5. This was disputing that Nolan was seen at 5. The next time somebody had something was 7:30 where they said Nolan was nowhere to be found. So they got the 4:30 departure, and then they got this 5 o'clock and 7:30 where Nolan is nowhere to be found, which consistently creates a gap where what happened to Nolan between 4:30 and 7:30. And the problem that I have with this is that even at 7:30, you don't see Nolan anywhere here, but that don't mean Nolan is still not at the island. So we don't know if Nolan has been killed by somebody at this point, has drowned at this point, or he's still somewhere else on the island with that girl or by himself. So the Cajun Navy really didn't do anything spectacular. It almost seemed more like a distraction than anything.
You are seeing a photo obtained by our friends at the United Cajun Navy. And speaking of the United Cajun Navy, joining me now is Brian Trasher, Vice President, United Cajun Navy. And for all of you attacking the United Cajun Navy, let's see that aerial footage they provided us. This is from the Cajun Navy, describing their search, their aerial search. They spotted Nolan Wells' body. They have been integral in the search for Nolan Wells and helping elucidate the facts as we know them. Brace yourself, Trasher. Everybody else is getting death threats. You might as well join the party. To you, Brian Trasher, the United Cajun Navy has come up with a timeline. Now, did I hear Caitlin Becker from the New York Post correctly that photo where the boats are named Boat 1, Boat 2, Boat 3, and Boat X, is that from you guys, the United Cajun Navy?
First of all, I want to thank you for calling this report what it is, and it's a timeline. And some people have called it an investigative report, and that's not accurate because, as you know, we're not investigators. And what we did, Nancy, was we asked our followers, say, hey, if anybody was there that day, you have pictures, videos, whatever, send it to us just so we can go through it, see if there's anything relevant. We took all that information and compiled it into just one digestible report of things we thought were relevant and could be helpful. Maybe they're not. Maybe law enforcement's already seen all this and it's nothing new to them. But we just wanted to be transparent about what we received. So going back to your question, the pictures that we received, we did not, as an organization, take any of these photographs. These are all images that we received from people who were trying to help us out and trying to help Nolan's family out.
So you asked the public for help, and you got it. You got a treasure trove of photos, and I find this one significant. Guys, we've got an all-star panel, and I would like the all-star panel to look at their screens, because I've talked about this before, Brian Trasher, and I'm frankly fed up with attacks on the United Cajun Navy. They're doing something, which is more than all of the haters can say. They're doing something. They have amassed evidence. They have created a timeline to the best of their ability. They have shared it with us, unlike the autopsy that is complete is being kept secret from us. That said, they're helping. Why trash them? That's, I'm not a shrink. I can't answer that. Let's look at this photo and determine what, if anything, we can discern. Brian, you and I have talked many, many times, and I told you about a serial killer I finally convicted on one case. The jury convicted him. And I proved a lot because of one earring. One earring I found in a particular location. The victim was wearing an earring, and the other earring had been sliced out of her ear, and I found it somewhere else, and I learned a lot because of where it was. Now, don't even bother to tell me that this photo that you have produced is not probative of something. The cluster of boats. Number one, I see a lot of witnesses. Trasher, do we know what time this photo was taken?
We don't know definitively times on all these because even though they're time stamped, it could be a time when it was screenshotted, stamped, not necessarily the original photograph. So we were very careful to denote that in our report that we can't verify timelines, although based on shadows and positions and things like that, we can determine that some of these, as noted, are taken in the late afternoon. One of the things I thought was interesting about some of these photos we got, Nancy, was that a lot of the photos we had seen before were people like in waist deep water. Well, some of the photos we provided show people up, water up to their chest, almost to their neck, and that's not really wading. That's treading water, in my opinion, and that I thought might have been significant to know that many people were, perhaps enjoying some libations, but also in water that might have been a little too deep just to be playing in.
Good point. You also said something else really smart, and I certainly do not want to rely on this, but sometimes you have to, you take the evidence as you find it, and you make the most of what you've got. You said you could tell this was late in the afternoon because of the shadowing. I wonder if the tide could tell me anything. Because how high up the water is. But these people holding drinks, they're not treading water, Trasher. They're standing there. These people are not treading water, and the water is up to their armpits. Is that the photo you're talking about as to where you think some of them are treading water, or are there other photos?
The photo at the top, you're right, it's about up to their armpit. I think there was one later in the report that that showed some of the kids. This was a screenshot of a social media post, and there's 3 boats visible, one fourth boat further in the distance, but a lot of kids on one boat. I say kids, young people on one boat, some on the boat, some in the water, and some of them it looks, maybe up to the armpit, but some of them, depending on their own height, it looks like it's, I could see a girl holding something in her hand, and the water looks to be pretty close to her neck. So that's pretty far out. Now, we've said several times that Horn Island has a very aggressive slope, so you can be in shallow water and deep water within just a few steps. And once you get into that deep water, you're not as able to keep your feet on the ground if a current comes and pulls you, or God forbid a riptide comes and drags you. So that's why we thought it was significant to know that they were socializing in fairly deep water.
Can we go back to the main photo where the boats are numbered 1, 2, 3, X? Isn't it true, Brian Trasher, that these boats are easily identifiable by I call it a tail number, like you would a plane? Every boat has to be registered, or supposed to be registered. It has a number on it, and it often has a name like Triton. One was named Mac Daddy. There were other names. They're registered, and you know who the owner is, and the owner can tell us who was on the boat that day. Is that correct?
Theoretically, yeah. If you can make out the registration number or the name of the boat, if the vessel's name is registered, along with the registration number. Usually that's sometimes only on a Coast Guard document, but sometimes on a state registration you do put the vehicle, the boat name if it's asked for, or if you have one. So that is all possible. I'm told, and we're asked to compare notes with the sheriff's office, which we're doing. But I was told that there's been a lot of people that have been contacted and interviewed, and there's a lot of people who were there that day that voluntarily came forward to tell what they know, and because they might have seen their boats and pictures, said, "Oh, we might want to go ahead and call them, let them know, where we were, who was with us, and what we know." So I commend those people for coming forward, because it's not always easy.
To Marie Pereira joining us, in addition to the Vice President of the United Cajun Navy, who has been there from the get-go trying to help solve the case. Marie Pereira, registered nurse, which is important, but she is a criminal defense attorney and domestic violence expert. She is a violence expert certified advocate. Marie, you saw that. All those people in my book are witnesses. One of them is saying at 7:30, Nolan was nowhere to be seen. Now, I want to see the video or the photo again, because you want to tell me that this guy, Nolan Wells, hit his head and drowned, and none of those people saw what happened? I find that really hard to believe.
It is hard to believe, and that's why it's extremely important that the law enforcement are not too proud to get help from the public. Like you said, if people are sending in videos, they should be using those videos to conduct further investigation. I'm praying that this is a situation like Brian Koberger, where the police department, they were being ragged and being called ranky-dink police, while all the time they were investigating and putting together a case against him. I hope that, because all the time they were saying, "Oh, what are they doing?" It was I think the DA had a long, big beard, which wasn't very conducive to believing he knew what he was doing, but they knew what they were doing.
I know, it looked like Leonard Skinner sitting there. Hey, that videos from Officer Tatum's podcast, all this means witnesses to me. And do you remember in the Diddy case, there was actually a toll-free number for victims to call? There were that many victims, not that it helped at the trial, but that said, I think there needs to be a toll-free number. If you think you have evidence, dial the number. If you have photos like the United Cajun Navy is doing, they asked for the public's help. They got the public's help, and there's more to get. That's what is needed now. Every picture, every video. How often have cases been cracked when someone spots something in a picture they hadn't noticed before, or their memory is jogged by a photo or information they've seen online? I've pointed to this a million times. That said, Brian, how did you create this timeline? I find it very interesting.
So, first of all, going back to your comment about internet sleuths, a lot of people consider themselves internet sleuths, but some people really are good. And there's one young lady who's helped us out on many cases, who was very helpful in this case. I haven't asked her permission yet if I could say her name, but if she gives me permission and I come back on, I'll be happy to give her credit for all the help she gave us. But basically, what we did was we took these pictures, we juxtaposed them to, like Google Earth and satellite pictures of the island to try to determine exactly where they were. We looked at the initial coordinates called out from I think from the Coast Guard or from Marine Patrol when the missing persons report first went out, and basically just try to run these pictures against each other to say, okay, this boat's here now, it's not here later, and again, just create an index. We had to use some software to help us create the index of the pictures and make sure we put it into the best timeline we could. We included social media posts that, may or may not have been definitive, but this was happening in real time. So we thought it was important to put those up there to create context. And so again, just trying to, our goal was to take what we've received, put it into a digestible format that just about anybody could understand, hopefully. And if it's helpful, great. If it's not, then I don't think, no harm, no foul,
We have a very special guest. We have Brian Fitzgibbons, Director of Operations at USPA Nationwide Security and Investigations. You have led search teams not only in the United States searching for missing people, but around the globe. I appreciate your time. This new report released by the United Cajun Navy, what sticks out to you about the Nolan Wells case?
Yeah, first of all, this was, a very comprehensive working analytical document put together by the United Cajun Navy. These guys have a ton of experience doing this type of work and put together a pretty remarkable work product here that I believe paints a picture for everybody, across the nation to see, what Horn Island looked like. What was the geography we were dealing with here? What was the dispersion of these vessels as they were parked up on the beach? And I think one other thing that I'll add, where it may help to answer some questions, is that this report goes a long way in identifying, who may be a witness to those critical hours and minutes. That there are gaps of information, that this report really helps provide a framework to build that investigation off of.
Yeah, because I think that that's really the heart of all of this, and the confusion and the misinformation is the timeline as it's unfolding, right? And we're trying to fill in the gaps. And what you're saying is that this new report kind of helps with all of that. What's not been disputed is the fact that, he was at his home on July 3rd with his family. July 4th goes out on the boating trip. But it's really what happens after, say, 3 o'clock. I do have a little bit of an interview that one of the friends that was out there with him gave, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
The last time I saw Nolan was 3 o'clock, and Nolan was cradling a girl in his arms, Katie, Katie. And Katie, Nolan was sitting there, and the last time I saw him, I looked at Nolan, and Nolan was like shaking his head, laughing, and I was like, dude, you crazy. I was like just joking with him. And but anyway, Nolan, that was the last time I laid eyes on him. But when we were leaving, obviously, no one is getting left at the island that came with us.
So we'll talk about Katie in the report, but this kind of starts to establish the timeline. And this is an eyewitness account from Warren Hudson, and this was on the Officer Tatum show on YouTube. If anyone wants to watch the full interview, that's a clip from it. But right there, I guess, as an investigator and as someone that has searched for missing persons and put together a timeline yourself, is this where you start?
Yeah, I mean, hey, what we have here is, a key eyewitness. This is an individual that Nolan arrived to Horn Island with, and he's describing the final moments of their interactions upon departing the island. And I think it's important to note in this case, eyewitnesses to a missing person case like this, when there isn't a marked event, there weren't gunshots or there wasn't an explosion that happened, right? They weren't aware that Nolan was missing for quite some time after they returned to shore. So, this individual and the other witnesses were not aware that they were witnesses at the time. So it doesn't surprise me that there have been conflicting stories. This is actually to be expected, that eyewitnesses are going to remember times different. They weren't looking at their watch or their phone to annotate the last time you saw somebody. It would be concerning if every eyewitness had the same exact story in the same exact timeline. That would actually stand out as a red flag. So, the simple fact that he's describing this sounds just like any other group of young folks going out to have a good time. Hey, he wanted to stay back for some reason, and we wouldn't have left without him if we weren't sure he wanted to stay back.
So around 4:30, he says that's when the boat was taking on water. That's when someone on the boat made the call, which I'll play for you. But in the same interview, he said this about trying to get Nolan on the boat. And this is again around the timestamp at around 4:30, according to his account.
Nolan was sitting by the boat with that Katie girl, and my buddy yelled for Nolan, get on the boat. We're leaving. The boat's having issues. And no, he didn't say that, but he was panicking. Nolan, get the F on the boat. Get on the boat. And Nolan said, no, I'm staying out here. I'm going to ride in with somebody else. And it's not uncommon to hear, but it's not like my buddy asked him one time. My buddy asked Nolan multiple times to get on the boat. Nolan, get on the boat. Get on the boat. We're leaving. If you're coming, you got to come now. And Nolan made a decision to stay out on the island.
I guess one of the big questions for a lot of people as they're, trying to search for answers in all of this, did he ever make it on the boat? So, and that's where this timeline is so critical, right? Because then you had TMZ posting this the other day, and it's from the same podcast, but it alleges to show the boat with 7 people on board, and Nolan is not on the boat, and this is around the time that the sea tow call is made.
A new video that has surfaced in the Nolan Wells case that seems to support what we were told by sources directly with direct knowledge of the investigation, that after Nolan's friends left on their boat at 4:30, that Nolan remained at the island. And in fact, there was one report that claimed that he was there as late as 6 o'clock, still on the island. This new video it shows the boat that Nolan's friends were on when they left the island. This is the boat that Nolan arrived at Horn Island on July 4th. Same friends. 7 people, which is what we heard them describe on the call to the tow company. And they are all on the boat there. This is as they are trying to get it started.
And there's no Nolan in sight.
Right.
I guess as an investigator, is your first step trying to establish that this is a real video and figure out what the timestamp of that video is, or what would you be doing as an investigator?
It looks like apparently came from CETO, or it was right around the time that call to CETO was made. So I don't have any immediate reason to question the veracity of this video. But what does this video do is it corroborates the statements that have been consistently made by the other passengers of the vessel, that Nolan did not board the vessel to return back to shore with them. And that this is a piece of information that certainly attests to that statement that has been made.
This has been the most difficult time we have ever had. I want to tell you who Nolan was. Nolan was a God-fearing, God-loving child. He loved everyone. Today we are begging, because I'm not too proud to beg. We are begging, if anyone knows anything, his friends, strangers, please call the hotline, because we will not be able to rest until we get answers.